Good morning again, and thank you all for attending today's webinar, WISHIN 2.0 Transition Technical Overview. We're pleased to report that with the help and support from our participants and our vendors, we are well on our way to transitioning to our new hybrid environment and transitioning the many interfaces specifically to Bellatorra and looking ahead to use the data from our participants to provide the services that you are familiar with and so much more. My name is Steve Rotman, Chief Operating Officer at WISHIN, and I will be the moderator for this morning's webinar. Please know that this webinar will be recorded and available on WISHIN's YouTube channel. All attendees have been muted. If there are questions, please submit those through the GoToMeeting chat feature found on the top right of the GoToMeeting window. Know that all questions will be posted to the WISHIN 2.0 webpage. Today's speaker will be Laura Witter, WISHIN's Project Director. She will provide a brief overview of WISHIN 2.0, share the technical solutions of WISHIN 2.0, discuss the enhanced CDL Exchange features and other technical solutions, and also review the technical transition process. Again, thank you all for joining. I'll hand it off to Laura.
Thank you, Steve. As you mentioned, I'm going to be doing an overview of WISHIN 2.0, our transition process, and then we'll talk through some of the technical solutions that will be available, new ones, including enhancements to the CDL Exchange, talking about the USCDI standard, and also covering fire, among other things. And then I'll go into the transition process. WISHIN 2.0, it will contain all of the products and services you've come to know, but it is better. We have heard a lot of suggestions from our customers through various forums, and we've listened, and so we've worked on WISHIN 2.0 to expand use cases and streamline functionality and create some enhancements that we heard from you. We still have a high trust infrastructure, and all the systems will be built in AWS. We have best of breed patient matching, and we're capable of handling new data sources with this change, such as social determinants of health, claims data, other types. We will have comprehensive inbound and outbound capabilities for HL7, CCDAs, FHIR, APIs, third-party applications, ability to ingest flat files, so we're much more flexible. We have redesigned the WISHIN Pulse Community Health Record based on suggestions from you, with built-in analytics as well. We'll be parsing CCDAs and make available a super CCDA, which we'll talk about in a little bit, along with new single sign-on capabilities, support for quality initiatives for payers, and analytics. This is just an overview of the hybrid relationship we have with our two vendor partners, Bellatorra and KPI Ninja. Bellatorra handles all of the data ingest and any kind of routing, whether that be HL7 messages, items for syndromic surveillance and immunization reporting, the routing to patient ping, and then they also handle the onboarding of the HL7 data. They'll be dealing with the CCDAs, provide and register, inquiry and retrieve. They handle our patient matching and have the data lakes, repositories, our direct secure messaging. And then over to KPI Ninja, who handles our user interface. They'll be designing our community health record, and they will be also involved in creating super CCDAs, single sign-on. They'll handle the patient activity reports. They're also working, or we have NCQA, well, they have NCQA certifications, and we're working with KPI Ninja for quality reporting purposes. They'll be managing the patient consent and opt-out process, and of course, analytics. And that will feed into the WISHIN 2.0 system, where we still have our connections to the Wisconsin ePDMP and the immunization registry. So some of the new technical solutions that we're offering with WISHIN 2.0, we have increased ability to incorporate new use cases and emerging technology. For example, we're fire ready, and Steve will talk about that in a couple minutes. We have a modular design, which allows us a greater ability to integrate with external systems and also to respond to immediate needs and new use cases much quicker. We have powerful message routing capabilities and push capabilities, so we can open up more new use cases for pushing data from our system to EHR systems. We have some different SSO options to meet our participants' needs. We will be parsing CCDAs and combining information into CCDAs. More HL7 message segments and fields will be supported. And we're also even supporting OBX segments and ADTs to gather important clinical data from those. And we are offering robust analytics capabilities. A little more about the CCDL Exchange enhancements. We still support XDSB for provide and register. The CCDAs are coming into the system and will be available as a document. But then key elements like medications will be parsed and appear in a medications list in the community health record as well, deduplicated. And then we still support XDSB and XCA, XEPD for query and retrieve. We will be still able to implement exclude lists for data you're already receiving from other sources to avoid receiving duplicate data when you query WISHIN. We'll be able to provide stable documents, which are the CCDAs that are sent by other WISHIN participants, or a super CCDA, which includes all HL7 medications, customer submitted CCDAs, and all of that is deduplicated and combined into one large document. And then we can also extend your queries to the eHealth Exchange to receive documents from the VA/DOD, DaVita, and other eHealth Exchange connections. Steve, did you want to talk a little bit about the USCDI Cures Act final rule?
Certainly. Thank you, Laura. And again, we encourage questions. If you have them, please submit those through the chat feature. As I talk through USCDI and the alignment with the 21st Century Cures Act final rule and fire resources, I'll be calling on our new vendors, KPI Ninja and Bellatorra. So with USCDI, this is an API exchange standard that was adopted by ONC. If you have reviewed version 1 or newly released version 2, it is focused on the discrete data movement through fire resources or CCD exchange enhancements. It does, or it will, over time replace the common clinical data set. So if we think of these as the common data sets for care management, medication, CCDA performance, etc., there's a standard in of data elements, data sets that will move to support the seamless exchange. WISHIN 2.0 will support USCDI standard. There's also the focus on the quality and completeness of the data. And Joe mentioned this for those that were on the executive overview call on Tuesday, that we will intentionally reach out to folks as we go through the USCDI standard of WISHIN 2.0 and how the data aligns with that standard and to meet the standard for seamless exchange and in accordance with the information blocking rule, to request and work with our participants to enhance the data that's coming into WISHIN. The quality of the data is vital to making sure that WISHIN is able to move the data under the USCDI standard, but also the completeness. So where we might see aspects of the ADT, the lab, radiology, transcription, maybe there's gaps that we need to reach out and fill in and make enhancements to your interfaces. So again, that we are providing an exchange service, not just to you, but to other providers or payers that members, your patients have access to, that is complete and clear. Again, we will align the USCDI standard to the fire resources. It is intended within the ONC Cures Act final rule, and what I'll talk about next is that alignment, what fire resources we will have at the ready, and opportunities to expand the available fire resources to meet that seamless exchange. So KPI, Vineeth, Naren, anything to add to that before I get to Jill's question?
No, I think, Steve, this is Vineeth. Good morning, everyone. So to your point, right, Steve, this assessment not only helps, in alignment with national standards, but also it does help, in providing high, data quality and rich data to support various use cases. And we have been seeing, with other HIEs as well, how this assessment and how this, adherence to the standards is playing out in providing other services, being enriched, whether it is interoperability, analytics or population health use cases. So we are super excited about, not only conforming to the standards, but also how this could help deliver, better solutions at the tail end of these different offerings as well. So just wanted to add that comment, Steve.
Thanks, Vineeth. So Jill had a question in the chat. I am coordinating delivery of the MT code for USCDI this fall. Jill, I'm not sure what MT code is. I apologize. Can WISHIN 2.0 support USCDI now or Meditech? Thank you, Jill. So MT code would be Meditech. Can WISHIN 2.0 support USCDI now or not until after the transition to Bellatorra? The current incumbent vendor architecture is not built around USCDI, but depending on when this fall is to you, Jill, again, we are planning on this transition completing right around or before September 30th of this year. So if we can still help you meet the delivery in accordance with the USCDI standard, we'd be happy to have that call. As we've built this hybrid infrastructure, what's been top of mind for the design has been a USCDI standard. So I would say natively, WISHIN 2.0 will meet that, and there will be enhancements. Out of the gate, it's not going to be 100%. This goes into the quality and completeness that we're seeing as we're going through this transition process. So it will take some time to get ourselves to our standard of the USCDI standard based on the data that we have. So hopefully that helps answer your question or set the expectation of what you will see and how you can leverage WISHIN 2.0, or any of our participants can leverage WISHIN 2.0 to meet that USCDI standard for your organization. Any other thoughts with that, Vineeth or Naren?
Okay. Steve, yeah, I think to your point, right? So we'll probably get need to get a little more details. Maybe after the call, we can have a conversation with Jill to get specific timelines and what the requirements are, and see how it matches with the go live date, and see how we can best support for sure.
Great. So Jill, we'll be in touch after this call. Thanks, Laura. If you want to move to FHIR. So really, we see FHIR resources under 3 categories or main use cases. And this will vary, and we will adapt as additional FHIR resources are available or use cases are presented to us, but broader clinical discrete data exchange. So we've already talked about USCDI. Yesterday, we talked a bit about social determinants on health. So how that clinical information is not limited to USCDI or SDOH, but lab data or anything that has to do with chronic conditions, how this information can be moved to the right person at the right time for the right patient. And that moves into seamless EHR integration while we are leveraging, and there's great use of single sign-on. We see that there is a world beyond that that might be more desirable over time, where the data you're experiencing in your EHR and the workflow might include by default or through a EHR integration data that's sourced from WISHIN, which is sourced by our participants. So that seamless integration into the EHR, EMR, care management systems, et cetera, is where we see a great area. Also, payer-to-payer exchange, and this extends even beyond with the DaVinci product that we'll project that we'll talk about, is payer to provider exchange, and how to move this data so it's free flowing, it's not beyond a wall that's hard to breach. Leveraging the WISHIN infrastructure, our participant relationships, so that movement of data is fairly seamless. What we're seeing in the market, though, is not many already, and I think that's fine. The FHIR resources and FHIR infrastructure, we can't say is brand new, but it's maybe still growing up as WISHIN is. So while organizations might not be ready, or it's not widely adopted, I think that goes into how WISHIN's readiness through this transition to Bellatorra and KPI, how that readiness creates pathways to exchange, and how our participants can look at WISHIN to be that exchange mechanism for FHIR and for compliance with any federal regulation or rules to move data based on a provider or patient's request for information. That WISHIN could be the path to comply. With our readiness, under WISHIN 2.0, there are a number of fire resources on the shelf. We've talked to a few participants in the past. We've had some conversation about what resources could be leveraged immediately. And this goes into the payer-to-payer exchange that Bellatorra has an interop station where we could plug into, and they already have built these fire accelerators for Karen, Da Vinci product, Gravity, etc. So those resources that we have on the shelf can be launched fairly quickly after WISHIN 2.0. So I imagine some are more interested than others right now, but this is the capability and flexibility we'll have. We will be lighter on our feet to provide fire resources, something that we haven't been able to do previously. To the fire accelerators, we touched on Da Vinci already. Payer to provider exchange, how that is focused on value-based care, reducing costs, increasing quality, enhancing the care management of the patients and members throughout the network. Karen is aligned with the CMS interoperability rule. So as I mentioned previously, consumers, caregivers requesting access to information from a third party, those fire resources and APIs, some are on the shelf, some can be modified to meet the patients and caregiver expectations. And then finally, Gravity. Again, we talked about SDOH yesterday. We will continue the conversation with SDOH in the future on how we can bring in social determinant information and be the mechanism or a mechanism to move that data free from boundaries. It's focused on standard-based exchange and establishing use cases around making that SDOH data available. A few others, before I hand it back off to Laura, a few other use cases that we're looking at are streamlined third-party application integration. And so what we look at there is, in the past, we've looked at My Health Direct as the scheduling solution in Milwaukee and how we can move and integrate seamlessly through a fire integration. Today, we do have Smart on Fire, so we're using Fire today with our ePDMP integration. The way that we can leverage Fire to supplement or complement the VPN, the current VPN exchange or HL7 data exchange, I see a great opportunity to exchange with other HIEs across the nation through Fire, built-in API calls, and again, moving not the entire network of data, but specific elements, data sets that we've established to make that information move seamlessly. And I wouldn't say finally, but one of the many other use cases we're looking at is claims and clinical data alignment, exchange, and bringing that data together to support your value-based care programs or contracts that providers and payers have with one another. Bellatorra, James, is there anything else you'd add to the fire resources and capabilities we'll have?
No, Steve. Good morning, everybody. It's Melissa Erickson from Bellatorra. No, I think you really did summarize it well, Steve. And just to, again, kind of recap, based on really the new standards that we're seeing with fire, our focus still is, transitioning the HL7 and IHE profiles. But as you alluded to, based on market readiness, our focus is really working with primarily the payers right now, given just the regulations and the compliance needs for FHIR APIs with recent CMS and ONC standards and requirements. And then, as the market kind of expands, looking at these additional use cases, we are seeing with some of the FHIR HL7 accelerators. So it's really exciting, and we're really excited to work with WISHIN and the stakeholders around Wisconsin to be able to start working with, again, some of these new emerging standards and really move the dial with interoperability.
Thanks, Melissa. I don't see any other questions in the chat, so Laura, I'll hand it back off to you.
Thanks, Steve. I'd like to talk a little bit about the technical transition, the transition process on the technical side. One of the things I wanted to start off with is what's happening during this transition. We initially sent out to all of our customers who are submitting data to WISHIN a questionnaire asking them approximately when they could move their data over to our new system, and for IT contacts and business contacts that we can reach out to during this process. The first thing we did after that, or during the transition, is we set up pass-through interfaces between our current vendor, HCI, and Bellatorra and KPI Ninja, so that our current system always stays up to date with data as we transition our customers over to the new system, and that our new vendors have access to historical data so that they can build the new system. So here you can see we've assigned customers to waves, and we've been reaching out to our technical contacts to have them transition over. So for a while yet, we'll have some customers sending directly still to HCI, some customers sending directly to Bellatorra, but then Bellatorra and HCI are exchanging data with each other to make sure that we have accurate data and no data gaps in either system. So that will be happening throughout the transition process until we make the absolute final cutover. The most important piece, or the highest priority piece for transitioning, is the HL7 interfaces. This transition needs to happen as quickly as we can so that Bellatorra and KPI can build their message processing based upon the data they're receiving, the transformations, the data mapping, the community health record. All of that hinges primarily on these HL7 interfaces. All of our customers who are sending data should have already received a VPN form from WISHIN. If you haven't, please reach out to me. And as soon as you can, please complete that VPN form and send it back to me or your implementation specialist, Keith or Cheryl. Just a couple points on that. We've had a couple points where we've run into a few delays. The VPN form for your IP addresses, they must be public IP addresses for both test and production interfaces. If you are unable to provide public IP addresses for the VPN tunnel, let us know, and we can have Bellatorra assign NAT IP addresses to you so that you can NAT to those addresses. And your HL7 interfaces will move to the Bellatorra VPN tunnel, and as I mentioned, after they move, Bellatorra will send them over to HCI to make sure that our community health record that exists now does not have any data gaps. So they will take over that sending to HCI piece of it while you're sending to Bellatorra. Once your side of the VPN tunnel is ready, let WISHIN know, and then we will work with our Bellatorra resources to set up a connection call. There are specific requirements for the keys to secure the VPN tunnel. So Bellatorra can provide a PSK to you via secured message, or you can exchange keys during the connection call. Always want to make sure that this is exchanged securely. And depending upon your preference, our migration can happen on one call or over multiple calls. while we're doing that migration, during the call, Bellatorra will confirm that messages have been received by them, and then WISHIN verifies that the pass-through connections are active from Bellatorra over to HCI, and the community health record is still being populated. The resources usually needed for the HL7 transition, especially on the connection calls: a networking resource who can manage and adjust the VPN settings, do any troubleshooting if needed; a firewall resource who can troubleshoot firewall settings because the IP addresses must be also whitelisted on firewalls; and then an applications resource who can turn on and off the interfaces and send the data through those tunnels. For the HL7 transition, just a couple reminders: the IP addresses must be public, or Bellatorra can provide natting addresses. Whitelist, you need to also whitelist all Bellatorra IP addresses on your firewall, and always make sure that the keys are exchanged via secure messaging. One thing I did want to mention with the HL7 transition, we are not asking customers to make any changes to the interfaces themselves. The transition process only focuses on moving the data from the HCI VPN tunnel to the Bellatorra VPN tunnel. There's no need to modify anything in your HL7 interfaces. For our customers who are doing direct messaging, especially through an XDR connection into your EHR system, that requires a few more steps. We have, in order to prepare for this, we will work with you to confirm your server endpoints, and we may need a copy of your server certificate if we don't already have it on file. Anyone who's using direct messaging, you'll be able to keep your subdomain name and your direct addresses. You will not need to change those. But the good news is that you no longer have to maintain a domain certificate. Previously, WISHIN required both a server certificate and a domain certificate. We don't need the domain certificate anymore. But you will still keep the same addresses and the same domain name. And then we will also schedule a meeting with you to walk through this process in detail, because there are a lot of integrated steps. We will work with you to confirm your direct addresses. So whoever on the business side maintains your direct addresses will work with you to confirm those. For Epic customers, we'll ask you to provide WISHIN with an extract of your direct addresses that you have in your Epic system. For the non-Epic customers, we'll download your existing provider directory from our HISP, and we'll need you to confirm that those addresses are still valid and active, and you can add and remove however you need to. And then for all XDR connections, we will prepare the direct addresses to be in a format needed to upload to the new HISP. So all direct addresses, even Epic addresses, will need to be uploaded and maintained in a HISP portal. But the good news is, especially for those who have had to maintain these addresses manually in the HISP, is you can do batch uploads now. So if you have a large group that you need to upload, you can add them to a spreadsheet and batch upload them instead of entering them one by one. The people who will be maintaining those direct addresses, they will need to complete identity verification forms to be authorized business representatives for your organization. And that will mean that they are authorized to manage those email addresses. That's usually a business resource, or it can be an IT resource, but they would be logging into the HISP in order to manage those direct email or those direct addresses. Then we'll work with you and provide you a link to download and install a new direct certificate, and it has to be installed on your XDR server. Of course, you'll have to whitelist appropriate IP addresses. And as I mentioned, we'll be uploading, once that is all finished, we'll be uploading direct addresses to the HISP portal and then work to test connections. That's the process at a high level. The resources that are normally needed for direct messaging transition is an IT resource with access to your, I guess that's XDR server, sorry, and who can install the certificates and manage the endpoints, the place where you're pointing the messages. You'll need a firewall resource who can troubleshoot firewall settings and make changes. At least one, you can have multiple, authorized business representative who can manage direct addresses. And then resources who can test sending messages and confirming message receipt into your EHR systems. CDL Exchange. For the customers who have active CCDA interfaces, we will provide you with Bellatorra's specifications. They have a spec document, and it contains a link to download the public certificate. Whoops, looks like there's a mistake in the slide, sorry. And then WISHIN is going to ask you for the following information. Whether you want your own patient records returned in your queries. So do you want your own records excluded from the data that's returned to you? What other organizations' patient records do you want excluded from queries? This is especially pertinent to our Epic customers, of course, because they have Epic Care everywhere. And to eliminate duplicates, we can definitely exclude other Epic customers' data from our system. And then, do you want to receive the stable documents? So those are the documents that have been submitted by other customers. Or do you want a super CCDA, which is a combination of all of our HL7 data, including payer-submitted medications and Medicaid medications, and also combined with all the customer CCDAs. So we are calling it a super CCDA because it has everything. It is deduplicated, by the way, or both. So you can get just the straight CCDAs. You can get us one super CCDA that has everything in it, or you can get both if you like. And then do you want your queries to retrieve CCDAs from our eHealth Exchange connections as well? So when you submit an automated query to WISHIN via XDSB or XCA, XCPD, we will be able to extend that query out to the eHealth Exchange, pull data from that back in to the response and send that over. Once we've made those decisions, you can develop your CCDA interface in the test environment based on Bellatorra specifications. So like I mentioned, Bellatorra does have a spec document that talks through all the different fields in CCDAs and what's expected in your ITI messages. We did do a review of that, and Bellatorra specifications are not that much different than your existing connection to WISHIN. Of course, the endpoints are different, the certificates will be different, but there are components that you may be able to reuse. So you can take a review of that, compare Bellatorra specifications to what you're currently doing. You'll have to whitelist the appropriate IP addresses in your firewall if needed. And then we'll work with you to test the CCDA communications with Bellatorra. So you can do the test with the provide and register, the test with the query and retrieve to make sure that everything is working appropriately. Once the testing is complete, WISHIN will reach out to you to notify you when you should schedule a move to production. It'll be on or around WISHIN's final transition date. So once you've got it completed, we do want you to hold off moving it to production until WISHIN gives you a schedule about approximately when you can start doing production queries and production provide and register. Mainly that is because even though we have the pass-through interfaces for the HL7 data, we do not have pass-throughs for the CCDA exchange. We want to avoid data gaps. So we will ask you to develop the CCDA interface, test it, make sure it's ready to go, and then we'll work with you on a scheduled date that you would move it to production. And of course, until that time, we want your existing production CCDA connections to stay live to HCI. Single sign-on. This is another piece for those who are using single sign-on. And I am not going to pretend to be an expert on the single sign-on piece. So I'm going to give you a high-level information. If any detailed questions come up, I may ask for KPI Ninja to help answer those questions here. Otherwise, when we're working with you on the single sign-on for the new function, for the new system, we're happy to have meetings with you to walk you through the single sign-on process. We have already provided your organization with specifications for the new single sign-on to the community health record. If you did not receive those specifications and you have single sign-on, let us know. We will certainly get those out to you. We do support a slightly different method. We can do a standard method that does require a one-time login to set up the user, or we can do impersonation authentication, where you don't have to maintain the actual usernames in the new WISHIN Pulse system. That is all just maintained on your side. And then we have user authentication, which means that the users are set up in the WISHIN Pulse system and the users are set up in your own system, and the authentication happens because of a match between the two systems. Now, we do know that some EHR systems aren't quite ready for this method. We do know it is supported by Epic, and we know some other EHR vendors that do support this already, and some EHR vendors who will be supporting it around the beginning of the year. So if your current EHR doesn't support these methods and you need some time before you can implement this new method, reach out to WISHIN. We will work with you on that. We don't want anybody to lose out on their single sign-on. But when you are ready to begin developing your single sign-on, let us know. We'll coordinate with KPI Ninja and provide you with the information you need to develop a test connection, and provide you with all the keys you need and all of that information. And we can also coordinate a meeting with your organization and KPI Ninja to walk you through the specifications, answer any questions you have. We're here to help with the single sign-on. For some of the other data that's coming into our system that I haven't covered, you know, we do acknowledge we receive payer member files. We receive a lot of flat files from various organizations, and of course there are the patient activity reports. Good news for a lot of this, if you're submitting your files through Voro Health, which I know there are a lot of clinics doing that, Voro Health is a third-party vendor, or if you're submitting information through SharePoint, we do have one use case for a SharePoint submission. For the time being, there will be no changes to your files or how you upload them during this transition process or even after the process is complete. That will all stay the same. We will be working with the third-party vendors to transition the vendors themselves over to Bellatorra and KPI Ninja, but your processes will stay the same. In a future phase, we may optimize these processes to streamline the data submission and transformation, but for now, we're not going to make any changes. Then there's the customers who are submitting member files, payer medications, care plans, and who are retrieving the patient activity reports through the SFTP site. For those who are uploading and retrieving directly from that site, we will provide you with a new SFTP connection to upload and download information. You do not have to make any changes to the content or structure of the files you're submitting. We will just be switching you to a different SFTP site. Also, we can offer some expanded options for the customers who receive the patient activity reports, which is exciting news. We are available to include ambulatory data in the patient activity reports now. We can also push the reports to your SFTP site if you'd prefer, instead of picking them up from ours. So if you are interested in talking about some of those expanded options, contact WISHIN and we can work with you. Finally, in yesterday's webinar, I covered a lot more about the user transition because it was focused at the business side, but I did want to talk a little bit about it here in case users are maintained by the technical teams. For the user setup, if you're not using impersonation authentication single sign-on, we will ask for your organization's business contact. You provided that contact in the questionnaire to review the list of users that are currently in our system. We want to make sure that when we load new users into our, or we load the users into our new system, that it is a complete list of active users. There aren't any terminated users whose account should be terminated on that list. We just want to take a step back and take a look at those users. Once you've verified that user list and let us know if it's accurate, we will upload that list to the system. WISHIN will do that, the initial users. And we will hold training sessions for user administrators. So those who at your organization who do have user administrative privileges and will be maintaining them, we'll introduce you to the new system and walk you through how to set up users, terminate accounts, all of that. Then for the actual users, we are planning to provide training. We're going to be holding a series of online training sessions for users. They can sign up for that. And we will also make recordings of those training sessions available. And then, of course, for organizations who have special use cases, we do have some that are using the system in limited ways. We'll work with your organization to schedule training specifically for your organization so that it caters specifically to your use case. So in closing, we are really excited about the transition and working with our customers, and are very excited to show off the new system once that is available. Any questions come up, anything you need to know about the transition, please reach out to me, or you can reach out to your implementation specialist that you've been working with. If you have not received any contact from WISHIN, we are hopefully have reached out to everyone. But if you haven't heard about this, if you haven't received any information about any data transitions, again, reach out to me. We will make sure that we get you in the loop. And if there are any other questions, please feel free to post them in the chat, and Steve and I can handle them. But otherwise, I want to thank you all for joining.
And again, you can find the recording of this and our other 2 webinars from Tuesday, the executive overview, from Wednesday, the business overview, on our YouTube channel. The other 2 are already posted, and we will share links to those in our upcoming WISHIN Connections newsletter. So I'm not seeing any other questions, Laura. Yes, Nathan, I can drop that in the chat right now for you. So that is in the chat. Nathan asked if we can drop the YouTube channel link. So that's there. Nathan, you could also subscribe to our WISHIN Connections newsletter. You can do that through our website. But not seeing any other questions, I think we will close this meeting. And again, appreciate all for attending and our partners for contributing today, KPI Ninja and Bellatorra. Have a great day and rest of the week.